How many? Complications. Hello? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please respond, at least some of you. Okay, now? Shall we
Yes,
start?
ma'am.
Any doubt in the last class subject? Anybody? Because I could not ask you on the day itself because the internet failure was there. So I stopped abruptly. Anybody? Any doubt in the last class? Say yes or no.
No, ma'am.
No, okay. Only one is answering. What about the others? So please try to interact when there is necessity. Okay. We'll go ahead with the Crohn's disease. So last class we are discussing about the etiological features, pathogenesis, and the clinical features. Now I'll go on to the complications. I have enumerated the complications also last class. So they can be divided broadly into three categories: intestinal complications, systemic complications, and post-operative complications. So the intestinal complications, as I told you, include stricture, fistula, perforation, abscess, and neoplasm. Whereas systemic complications include arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, sclerosis, episcleritis, uveitis, sclerosing cholangitis, and increased formation of oxalate stones, erythema nodosum, and pyoderma gangrenos. These are all possible systemic complications in Crohn's. Coming to the third category, that is post-operative complications. One is anastomotic recurrence, that is recurrence of the disease at anastomotic site. Next one is anastomotic fibrostenosis, that is narrowing. Third one is adhesional obstruction. So these are the three possible post-operative complications with Crohn's. Now I'll go on to each one briefly. So normal one happens in the intestine. So layer of that is most superficial cells they get shed off regular basis in the individuals, and that is replaced by underlying cells. When the lining of the intestine is irritated, that is by the form of inflammation or infection, whatever it may be, the cells may be shed more frequently, causing ulcers. And the difference between psoriasis ulcer is very simple. Psoriasis superficial ulcer is deep. That's all. They are more common in the ileum, colon, and the rectum. Ulcers can be serious if they go through, that is penetrate through the whole thickness of the intestine, and sometimes they may erode arteries that are supplying the intestines, and they can cause serious damage to the patient. This leads to life-threatening and sores and ulcers can be more and deeper and form tunnels through the tissues of intestine as well as to the adjacent organs. The organs that are commonly involved in formation are rectum, other parts of the small intestine, vagina, and the these tunnels are called cilia. And infected forms with special treatment such as either medication alone or even surgery. Both combined together has to be instituted for the patient with this is the classification of gastrointestinal where they can be broadly divided into two categories. One is internal fistulas, other is external fistulas. External means so communication of the intestine to the outside of the abdomen. That is, for example, enterocutaneous from the small intestine to the skin. That is external fistula. Internal means within the abdomen. They are once again classified into two categories: intestinal fistulas and extraintestinal fistulas. Intestinal means between the two lobes of the intestine, maybe small to small or small to large, when it is called enteroenteric fistula or enterocolic fistula. Whereas extraintestinal but within the abdomen, it is called extraintestinal fistulas. For example, being enterovesical fistula, that is between the small intestine and the bladder. Next one is rectovaginal fistula that tends to occur in case of females between the rectum and the vagina. This is how you can classify the GIT fistulas, and depending on their location and extension, they have to be treated. Coming to the next one, that is abscess. Abscess, is a collection of the pus that has found usually as a result of the fistula due to infection in these patients. An abscess must be drained anywhere in the body. Same principle holds good here also. So it must be drained in order to heal, or surgery may be recommended to remove the infected portion of the bowel. That portion which is connected with the abscess has to be removed most often. That is the meaning of this point. Now we'll go on to the other complication, that is bowel obstruction. The most common complication of the Crohn's disease is blockage of the intestine that tends to occur in 30% of the individuals, and that is known as bowel obstruction. A bowel obstruction occurs because the disease tends to thicken the intestinal wall with the swelling and scar tissue, narrowing or even blocking the passage. That means whenever there is a disease, it thickens the intestinal wall first, that itself narrows the lumen, and along with the swelling and scar tissue. So both all this together cause narrowing and sometimes even the blocking of the passage, producing intestinal obstruction. Now we'll go on to the other complication, incidence of cancer in these patients with Crohn's. Crohn's disease may increase the risk of developing cancer. That is one important point you should remember. If the inflammation is mainly in the small intestine, the risk of cancer of the small intestine is definitely increased. As a rule or in general, we observe that small intestinal malignancies are somewhat rare, but they tend to be more common in a patient with Crohn's disease. The risk of the cancer gets higher as great as 32 times than the normal people if whole colon is involved. That means if a Crohn's patient, if the colon is involved, whole of the colon is involved, then the cancer rate increases by about 32% or more than 32 times more than the normal people. That is the importance of the incidence of the cancer in a patient with Crohn's. Next complication is perforation. A perforation is a hole in the bowel. The size, location, and seriousness of the hole can vary. That means size of the perforation and its location where it is present, proximal or distal ileum, etc., or in the colon, and seriousness of the perforation can be varied. That is depending upon the size itself. We can arc time before the onset of, between the onset of the perforation and the time patient present to you. So this duration is also very important in the prognosis of these patients. Small perforations often heal themselves by themselves. So they do not pose much problem. There may be small perforations and they can heal spontaneously without much problem to the patient. More serious bowel perforations may require a surgery for the closure, and sometimes the person may need removal of that damaged area because it is already damaged with previous disease itself. So there may be a simple closure, but it is unlikely. But most often, such patients need removal of the damaged bowel hole in the vicinity also. So that is about the perforation. Coming to the next complication, that is toxic megacolon. It is more serious complication of Crohn's disease, which occurs when the large intestine stops working and expands suddenly. That is the clinical finding in case of toxic megacolon. The large intestine particularly stops working and it begins to expand. This can cause severe bleeding excessively or even rupture when it can be very dangerous. So this is the most dangerous complication of the Crohn's, that is toxic megacolon. Of course, less common when compared to that of the ulcerative colitis. Next, these are the skeletal complications. So these patients are known to have osteoporosis. The reason being, one is the patient will have a low calcium and vitamin D intake because of the malabsorption or reduced intake or reduced absorption, you can say. Poor absorption of the nutrients in the body. And third cause is the use of corticosteroids for a longer time in these patients as a medical management of the Crohn's. So these are the three reasons why these patients have a high incidence of osteoporosis. Naturally, these patients with osteoporosis are more prone to develop or more high frequency of to develop fractures like that. So these are the two studies I have given in a cohort study of 6,207 patients with chronic inflammatory bowel disease. Osteoporotic fractures were found in 25% of the patients and vertebral fractures in 7%. In addition, the age at fracture occurrence was 10 to 15 years younger than in healthy controls. A 40% increase in the fracture risk has been reported in patients with a Crohn's disease. So there are 2 points here. So definitely these people have a high incidence of the fractures of any bone, including the vertebra. That is one. And second thing is, even the fractures occur at an earlier age, 10 to 15 years early, younger to normal when compared to the normal individuals. So next study also, Klaus et al. Reported that 22% of 293 patients with the Crohn's disease had one or more vertebral fractures, and that 35% of the patients with the vertebral fractures were younger than 30 years of age. Same thing. So one is high risk for the fractures of both the general peripheral bones or vertebral fracture. Second is usually these fractures occur at an early age when compared to normal cultural people. Coming to the joint problems, up to 25% of the people with Crohn's disease will have joint complications, which may include intermittent joint tenderness or arthritis, including ankylosing spondylitis. So, ankylosing spondylitis, one of the causes for it is Crohn's. So these are the skin complications in Crohn's, erythema nodosum, which presents as red nodules on the shins. You can see on the left side. So you can see the reddish areas. So there, red erythematous nodules on the shins due to inflammation of underlying subcutaneous tissue and is characterized by septal paniculatus. This septal paniculatus is nothing but the inflammation of the adipose tissue that lies due to deflation. So the erythema nodosum is a characteristic feature of containing the red nodules on the shin that is very particular to the presence of this Crohn's disease. And these skin complications occur in about 15% of the people with Crohn's disease. Next, we'll go to the other important skin problem or the skin complications, pyoderma gangrenosum. It is a painful ulcerating nodule you can see on this slide. So that is the pyoderma gangrenosum, and that is one of the characteristic feature or complication of the patients with Crohn's disease. Next one is, you can see the clubbing also in this slide. So clubbing, a deformity of the ends of the fingers, also a result of the Crohn's disease. These are the dermatological and nail complications of Crohn's disease. Next most important is one of the very important organ that is affected is the eye. So eye complications tends to occur in 5% of the patients with Crohn's disease. These include, one is iritis, inflammation of the colored part of the eye, that is iris. And next one is uveitis, inflammation of the middle layer of the eye. Third one is episcleritis, inflammation of the white part, that is the sclera of the eye. So these three are the important eye complications: iritis, uveitis, and episcleritis. So till now we have enumerated all the manifestations of the complications of the Crohn's disease. Now we'll see what are the complications or the manifestations that are related to the disease activity. That means if the disease activity is more, these complications are more, otherwise reverse. So some factors or manifestations are not related to the disease activity. So I have enumerated both, listed out the two categories here. The conditions or manifestations related to disease activity include erythema nodosum, pyoderma gangrenosum, arthropathy, eye complications, aqueous ulcerations, and maladies. All these complications or manifestations can be more when the disease activity is more, or maybe less when disease activity is less. Next one is the factors or the manifestations that are unrelated to the disease activity include gallstone formation, renal stones, primary sclerosing cholangitis, chronic active hepatitis, and sacroiliitis. They are unrelated to the disease. And basically, we have seen in the first class itself, the inflammatory bowel disease essentially includes two conditions: ulcerative colitis mainly affecting the colon, Crohn's disease which is affecting along with the colon or separately. So all the parts of any part of the GIT, including stomach, starting from the mouth to the ends. So these are the differences between the ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. We can see the features on the first column. So the first one is the part of the GIT that is affected in case of ulcerative colitis is mainly the colon. So the rest of the part of the GIT is not affected. Whereas in case of Crohn's, as I told you, any part of the GIT including small and large intestines. Particularly, they are more affected, can be affected with Crohn's. And if you go into histological appearance of the ulcerative colitis, mucosa is mainly involved, whereas in Crohn's, full thickness of the bowel is involved. Characteristic feature in case of ulcerative colitis is confluent disease. That means one part of the bowel is involved, say descending colon, rectum, sigmoid and rectum, like that. So continuous disease and confluent disease. Restricted to that part only, they will not be able to see lesions in other part of the bowel. Whereas in case of Crohn's, stiff lesions are very, very common. That means one area is affected after an interval of or followed by normal area, then one more area of the affection will be there. That is what is known as meaning of the stiff lesion. Fistula strictures are more common with the Crohn's disease, but less common in case of ulcerative colitis. Granulomas are absent in ulcerative colitis, but they are present in Crohn's. Perianal disease not associated with the ulcerative colitis, but associated with the Crohn's disease. These are the important differences between the ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. We are supposed to know them in detail because once the case comes, see, management is quite different, both medical as well as surgical management. So, definitely fit is anything. Okay, shall I continue?
Hello, please keep quiet.
So the differences between the ulcerative colitis and the Crohn's disease, we are supposed to know in detail, definitely. Then here I have given one note, you can see the lower down. Resection of the colon and rectum cures the patient with ulcerative colitis. That is very, very important. Whereas recurrence is common of resection in Crohn's disease. So because the disease is localized to one area, limited area, in case of ulcerative colitis, resection of colon or the rectum sometimes that cures the patient of the ulcerative colitis. Whereas in case of Crohn's, this is not possible, so we need not go and we should not go for the extensive resection because recurrence is very, very common after a limited resection. You try to do only necessary resection. That is very, very, very important. That's the reason why you are supposed to know about the distribution and behavior of ulcerative colitis as well as Crohn's. Okay. Now we'll go on to the next part, that is diagnosis of Crohn's disease. So there are a lot of confusion in diagnosis, and we still 100% certainty will not be able to diagnose the condition. So looking to the matter, what are the investigations that are necessary to know, come to a conclusion at least. So Crohn's disease does not diagnose with the complete certainty. That's the first important point. A colonoscopy is most important. In 70% effective in diagnosing the disease, because you can see directly, visualize the colon. So you can see the lesions and terminal ileum. Capsule endoscopy you can use in endoscopic diagnosis, but nowadays that is not much useful because you know that the disease is known to produce narrowing of the lumen somewhere, probably in terminal ileum. So this capsule may go there and block the narrow lumen. So nowadays, if you want to go for the capsule endoscopy, you can use a biodegradable capsules also. Of course, that is not available all these facilities for us. And next one is 30% of Crohn's disease involve only the ileum. That is, you must know. That is the reason why cannulation of the terminal ileum is required in making the diagnosis. So you have to go with the colonoscopy, terminal ileum you have to see, or you can go with the small intestinal endoscopy also to see for the terminal ileum. So this part must be visualized because the incidence of the involvement of the ileum alone is 30%. That is a must. Complementary, secondary, or non-specific investigations like laboratory investigation, which give you an idea that it might have an inflammatory bowel disease, which include presence of the anemia, fall in serum albumin, magnesium levels, zinc and selenium levels, acute phase protein measurements you can do, and a stool called protecting specific markers. These are the specific markers. They support the diagnosis of the grams. Coming to the colonoscopy, as I told you, 70% accuracy is there. So when I do a colonoscopy, the main feature there is the patchy inflammation. So the inflamed mucosa will be in the form of irregular and ulcerations, very common, with mucopurulent X-ray. The earliest appearance are after ulcer, surrounded by a rim of erythematous mucosa. This is the earliest. After ulcer, superficial ulcers with rim of erythematous mucosa. As time passes on, they become more and more deep, and with increased severity of the disease and form fissured ulcers. So these after ulcers become larger and deeper with increasing severity of the disease. Finally, in the latter stages, still after that, the stitching may be, that is narrowing of the bowel lumen may be there. This is the colonoscopic view of the colon or the proximal ileum probably. So ulcers in the cross stitches you can see here and there. So studied with the mucopurulent discharge. So these endoscopic findings include, one is superficial ulcers. Next. There's one back up. Just please wait. At least మొత్తం రన్ చేసింది. Hello? Shall I continue? There is a small problem here. Hello, please respond, one of you. Okay. So you go to the endoscopic findings. So one is deep longitudinal ulcers, next one is cobblestone mucosa in the duodenum and the stomach. So what is this meaning of the cobblestone mucosa? You can see the deep ulcers somewhere, and in between the ulcers, the area will be normal, not affected, but edematous. That gives an appearance of the cobblestone mucosa. So that is more commonly seen in duodenum and stomach. And sometimes the enteroscopy may reveal jejunal ulcerations in picture. Jejunum is also involved sometimes. You will be able to see the ulceration and the and the earliest finding is, as I told you, after ulcers surrounded by rim of edematous mucosa. Next, coming to the endoscopic image of the cross disease, showing deep ulcerations, you can see about below. Basically, these ulcers can be divided into two categories: a superficial nephroid ulcers and a deep fissured ulcers. Most often, if you see the endoscopic view in early stages, you'll be able to see the nephroid ulcers. But most often, the patient comes here a little bit deep. The same problem is coming. You'll be able to see the patient in a deep ulcer stage. Both the ulcers are exit deep. But
Ma'am, audio is not clear, ma'am.
Audio is not clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Wait for a moment. Audio clear లేదంటే ఏదో చూడు. వేరే వచ్చేసమ్మా వస్తుందా? Able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we are talking about the ulcers. Most commonly visualizing ulcers are the fissure ulcers, either transverse or deep ulcers. Next, investigation of choice apart from the colonoscopy is the bleeding studies, very important in this patient. A barium X-ray is taken where the barium sulfate suspension is ingested by the patient, and a fluoroscopic images all are taken to check the inflammation and also narrowing of the small bowel. So here the barium studies, what we'll do is barium enema generally will be taken. If the ileocecal valve is very tight and not allowing the barium to pass into the terminal ileum, then we have to go for the barium in follow through. So orally we will give the suspension. And are you able to hear me? Okay. Shall I continue? Varnashi, please respond.
Yes, madam.
Yes, why don't you answer? I will not be able to understand whether you are perceiving it or not. Okay, we'll continue with the barium. So oral barium sulfate is given, and then we'll take the X-ray beams at different timings. So I think the anatomical abnormalities when stitches of the colon are too small for colonoscope to pass through, or in detection of colonic lesions. These are the indications and advantages of the barium compared to colonoscope. Suppose you passing the colonoscope, you are not able to negotiate through the narrowed portion of the colon. In such case, you will not be able to assess the disease distal to the narrowing. In such cases, barium is very much useful. That is one. And detection of colonic lesions. These are the two important advantages of the barium in studies when compared to that of the endoscope. Are able to follow? So both are necessary in these patients. So these are some of the very important and interesting signs you should know. So positive signs in case of Crohn's disease with barium. So one is target sign where you can see the mucosal ulcer surrounding translucent mound of edema. On the right side you can see very clearly. I'm not using the mouse because it is obstructing my flow of the movement of the slides. So you can see on the right field particularly. So ulcerations and the edema around. That is called target sign. This is rose-thorn appearance, particularly seen in case of Crohn's with transmural ulcerations. Because ulcers are very deep and passing throughout the width of the intestines, you can barium enters into that, and you can see on the right side very clearly thorn-like appearance. That is rose-thorn appearance. Third one is submucosal edema of the villi. Fourth one is a nodular pattern, also known as cobblestone appearance. You can see the endoscopic view in the middle also. On the right side, you can see the cobblestone appearance in barium. So that is because of the ulcerations in between the area. So the part of the intestines in between the ulcers is a little bit edematous, giving the appearance of cobblestone appearance. So circulation of the anti-mesenteric border, that is another feature you can see sometimes. String sign of contour. This is very, very important and is one of the PG questions. So here the edema are and sometimes fibrosis with ulcerated mucosa shows what is called a string sign of contour with barium follow through examinations. You can see on the left side the string sign of contour. So these are the manifestations that you can visualize with barium follow through. One is intestinal manifestations like neural thickening, neural hypervascularity, loss of flaring either partial or total, reduced or absent peristalsis of the involved segment, non-compressibility of the involved segment. These are the intestinal manifestations you can assess with barium follow through examination. Extra-intestinal manifestations include mesenteric creeping fat, mesenteric lymphedema. Complications like obstruction, that is phlegmon or abscess formation and perforation you can assess with barium follow through. Next investigation is the computerized tomography technique. It is less sensitive than barium studies in detection of mucosal changes like early mucosal changes like ulceration. So, but more sensitive than barium studies in detection of extraluminal changes like neural or external intestine. That means early changes you will diagnose or detect with barium studies. Late stages or complications or extra-intestinal complications you can assess more with the CT. For example, the track of fistula is better demonstrated on the barium studies because the barium can enter into track and visualize as a radio opaque area, while the sequelae of these tracks are better demonstrated on CT. For example, air in the urinary bladder in intravesical fistula. So intravesical fistula, it is present. The fistula tract you can visualize with the barium studies, whereas this sequelae, that is presence of air in the bladder, you can assess more better with the CT. Are you able to understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So this I have already told you, ulcerative colitis mimics the symptoms of Crohn's disease. As both are inflammatory bowel diseases, they can affect the colon. Colon can be affected in both these conditions. Sometimes it is not possible to tell the difference which condition is there. Particularly in such cases, the disease is classified as indeterminate colitis, they'll say. And apart from these investigations, that is colonoscopy, barium, then CT examination, MRI also has some role in the diagnosis, particularly assessing the perineal disease. So other than that, it is not much useful. Now we go to the management of the Crohn's, apart from the, we have discussed already all investigations. So it is somewhat difficult. Wait for some time. So a close understanding between a physician and surgeon is crucial in the management of the Crohn's because medical therapy should always be considered as an alternative to surgery, although surgery should not be delayed when a clear indication for surgery exists. That is the important point to remember. So medical therapy should be always, actually to say frankly, this is the first line of management in any patient with a Crohn's disease, medical management. You should start the patient with the medical management, try to reduce or severity of the disease. That means you achieve a remission. You try to maintain it with medicines only. That is the main management. But surgery should not be delayed whenever there is a clear indication for surgery exists. Most often it is in case of chronic patients, but sometimes even acute patients also, because of complications, you may need to interfere with surgery. And another important point you should remember while managing the patient or making the patient ready for the surgery is patient must be optimized as far as possible prior to surgery, and this may require a pre-operative total perineal nutrition. That means you know that the patient with this Crohn's disease will not be able to cope with the surgery probably because of the defective nutritional condition of the patient. So he should be optimized as far as possible prior to surgery, and probably this may require a total perineal nutrition for some time. And Crohn's disease is a chronic relapsing disease with high likelihood of reoperation. So surgeon must take every reasonable effort to preserve the bowel length and sphincter. This point I have already enumerated or stressed previously itself. So never attempt to go for the larger segment removals. So it must be a conservative removal of the bowel because it is likely possibility that patient will go for the recurrence. Probably he needs surgery and a resection sometimes after that. So a limited resection is always essential in these patients. And remission once acquired should be prolonged in case of Crohn's disease. Symptoms are controlled with the medication, lifestyle changes, and surgery. Adequately controlled Crohn's disease may not significantly restrict daily living. This is very important. So a patient with the Crohn's need not get depressed because I have this chronic disease. How can I be able to do my work? So nothing is going to happen. So if the disease is controlled, so it will not restrict the daily living of the patient. Treatment for chronic disease is only Crohn's disease is only when symptoms are active and involve first treating the acute problem, then maintaining the revenue. That's what I have told you. So patients are diagnosed maybe an acute flare-up or chronic conditions, but they should be treated only once the symptoms are active and once the remission is achieved with the drugs. So try to maintain it. Unless a surgical complication there, you should not go for the surgery. Even if you go for the surgery, it should be limited. Yeah. Why it is moving on? This is open, huh? This one, this one. Okay, I use that. Coming to the antibiotics, the role of antibiotics, they can be used to reduce the infection and inflammation. And prolonged use of corticosteroids has significant side effects, in any condition. So effects of steroids are traditional, but still steroids are the traditional method for inducing remissions, though they have significant side effects. Alternative methods include aminoglycosides alone, aminosalicylic acid alone, or few of the patients may require immunomodulatory drugs. Are you able to see these slides properly? Hello, one of you please respond.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that is about the few points regarding the general principles of management. Well, now go on to the medical management first. The first step of choice is high aminosalicylic acid. Next step of choice are the prednisolone and methylprednisolone steroids. And hydroxychloroquine is used in severe attacks of the Crohn's disease. So it is reserved for only for the severe cases. And next third line of management is immunomodulators such as azathioprine, mercaptopurine, methotrexate, and infliximab and dalimumab. These are the drugs that are used in majority of the cases to control the disease if it is not amenable for the 5-aminosalicylic acid or steroids. First drugs are these two. Next one is these are the other points in controlling the disease: dietary adjustments after hydration. Like the customer. Can you convert it? So dietary adjustments, proper hydration and smoking cessation reduce it. And the patient has to consume balanced diet with proper portion. That means different types of nutrition, that is carbohydrates, in limited portions. Control meat, that is very important. Second thing is eat small meals frequently instead of big meals 3 times a day. That is very much important. Do regular exercise and take enough sleep. They have to identify the foods that trigger the symptoms. And remember, these are the other principles. Crohn's cannot be cured by surgery. I have already told you. Ulcerative colitis can be cured by surgery, but Crohn's disease cannot be cured by the surgery because of the extensive involvement of the bowel and high incidence of recurrence. Surgery is required in case of obstructions, fistulas, and abscesses, or if the disease does not respond to drugs. Not only these complications, but also when the disease is not responding to the drug, you have to go for the surgery and limited resection. After the first surgery, Crohn's usually show up at the site of the resection, though it can appear in the other localities. After a resection, scar tissue build up, which can cause strictures. A stricture is when the intestine becomes too small to allow the excrement to pass through and easily, which can lead to bladder. So these are the complications with the surgery. One is recurrence at the site itself, or recurrence at other locations, or the strictures resulting in the intestinal obstruction. For the patient with an obstruction to be strict, there are two options of the treatment. One is stricturoplasty and dissection of that portion of the tongue. When the stricture is found with the intestinal obstruction, you can go for the surgery. And there are two options. One is stricturoplasty, that is widening of the stricture by some surgery, or you can access that portion and do it there. That is the other option. And these are the other important suggestions to the patients. He has to drink a lot of fluids to keep body hydrated and prevent constipation. Take multivitamin, mineral supplements to replace the lost nutrients. And patient has to eat a high fiber diet, then this cross disease is under control. That is very important to avoid constipation. But during a flare-up, limit fiber diets and follow a low fiber diet to reduce stress on the intestine. That is very important. So normally they have to take a high fiber diet, whereas during flare-up they have to reduce the fiber. Avoid the lactose-containing foods if one has a lactose intolerance, or use lactase enzymes or lactase-free diet foods. So if they have lactose intolerance, you have to avoid it. That's all. Either taking lactase enzyme proper, or you can use some of the foods which are lactase-free diet foods. Try small fruit beans that I have told you already. Eating a high protein diet with lean meats, fish, and eggs may help relieve the symptoms of Crohn's. And particularly in case of acute flare, so take pre-digested nutritional drinks to give bowel rest. You have to rest the bowel to some extent. So the patient can take a pre-digested nutritional drinks, but at the same time he will get lost nutrients. Limit caffeine, alcohol, and sorbitol. Limit gas-producing foods such as broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, dry peas, lentils, onions, or carbonated rice. That has to be limited because the gas that is entering there can stress upon the or produce pressure on the weakened intestinal wall and get better. Reduce the fat intake. The part of the intestine has been surgically. That means if the ileum has been resected, a vitamin B injection may be necessary to be. Studies found that fish liver and flaxseed oil may be helpful in this management of these patients. The role of the prebiotics as well as probiotics has been discussed in recent journals. So they are very helpful in healing process in these patients. Finally, the indications for surgery is actually this is a medical condition to say frankly because medical management is more than surgical management. But once the surgery is necessary, we are supposed to do it very carefully. So you must know clear that indications about the patient for the surgery and the procedures that are necessary in a particular patient. So the indications for surgery are recurrent intestinal obstruction, that is one. Massive acute bleeding, of course, we have to go for it and then control the bleeding by some means. Next one is perforation of the bowel. You have to do the perforation or you have to access that segment and do anastomosis. Failure of the medical therapy in such cases where the patient doesn't respond to any line of management, so you have to remove the missing portion with the surgery. And third one is when the patient is becoming steroid dependent. So in such cases, you better go to surgery rather than giving the steroid for a long time. Presence of intestinal fistula, perianal disease, most often they present with multiple abscesses, multiple repeated ILDs, and presence of malignancy of course in surgery. These are the indications for surgery. So these are the surgeries for the transmissions, proposed surgeries options, we can say. Ileocecal resection is the most common one when we remove the terminal ileum and affected ileum along with the stick do ileocecal anastomosis. And next one is segmental resection of the short segments. So involved areas are torn or removed and then anastomosis is done. Colectomy and ileorectal anastomosis is done. Third one, subtotal colectomy. And sometimes, particularly to relieve the obstruction, we may have to go for the temporary loop ileostomy. Proctectomy and proctocolectomy very rarely. Stricturoplasty is after formation of strictures you can do. And finally, in the presence of anal disease with multiple abscesses, you may have to go for the institutional drainage procedure for these patients. So this class is over with the Crohn's disease. Any doubts? Please respond.
No, ma'am.
No, you don't have any doubt at all. Anybody else? Please kindly go to this chapter today itself. Okay. If you
Okay,
have
ma'am.
any doubts, you can ask even in the next class also, no problem. Anybody wants to have any doubts clear? Yes, please respond. Yes, one of you. Say conclude. Okay. Good day.